There's no way any of you could possibly know this, but I have been a massive DC fan for basically my entire life. One of my earliest memories was of me watching Superman Returns on the television, or that one Justice League cartoon with the amazing intro song, or various other DC properties, Injustice, playing that on the Xbox and everything. Now, in 2013, a movie called Man of Steel came out, and this movie was the genesis of basically my entire online presence, essentially. My internet origins were because of Man of Steel. I was a kid when this movie came out, and I loved it so much that I decided to create an email, create a Twitter account, create a Reddit account, just so that I could follow future comic book movie news and discuss Man of Steel online with the broader DC community. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as it relates to that's kind of where I'm coming from as it relates to Superman 2025 by James Gunn. I'll start off by saying this. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Man of Steel. I was a huge Man of Steel defender. I was one of those individuals who was part of the very early release the Snyder Cut wave. However, Man of Steel is of a different time. There are flaws and weaknesses of the portrayal of Superman in it. I believe that film is a great film, but it is a bad Superman film. Looking back and having experienced Superman 2025, I finally understand in totality and in seriousness the criticisms that people had of Man of Steel. So we're going to get into the review of this film very soon, but right off the bat, quick summary. I'm very excited to see what James Gunn has in store. He's a veteran of the comic book movie space. He's been involved with the DC Cinematic Universe for Suicide Squad, and he's been involved with Marvel for Guardians of the Galaxy. So this is not some random guy. He's a industry veteran with also specialized experience specifically in adapting comic books into movies. So after watching this film, I felt a sense of hopefulness and happiness that I haven't really felt in a very long time while watching a movie. Now, I tend to at times be a pretty low energy individual. I tend to not react strongly to things that are happening in movies. I tend not to watch movies or play games or read books twice, read them once, get what I can out of it, and that's kind of how I am. But just as in 2013, my love for Man of Steel and the storytelling at hand at that time inspired me to do so many things. Get into the internet, get into things like graphic design and video editing. After watching this film, I felt a very similar forward momentum. I feel the desire to get back into DC Comics after having been away for a very long time. I feel the desire to just create things not even related to Superman at all, just to create things. And I really feel like this film was something that America needed at this moment. It has a very beautiful message. Superman is in his traditional, all-American good guy, Boy Scout, good morals, kind of dorky vibe. And I believe that's what we need at this moment. So let's get into it. So one of the main criticisms of Man of Steel that I can remember from back in 2013 was that the film did not answer the question of who is Superman and what does he represent and what does he offer us as a mythology, in American mythology. What does he offer the characters in the world of Superman as a mythology, as a living character? And James Gunn sets out here to answer that question very quickly and very repeatedly throughout the entire film. Superman represents truth, he represents hope, he represents justice, he represents the American way, right? What we strive to be as a nation, right? And I wanted to point this out because in the modern era, there have been what I believe to be attempts to rewrite what it means to be an American and American morality and American ideological beliefs of how we should treat one another, our morality, and so on and so forth. So it's very special for us to take this character who was created many generations ago, bring him back into the modern era, not with modern interpretations of who Superman should be, but who he was as he was created. Truth, justice, hope, the American way, true, gentle manliness. He protects men, women, and children indiscriminately. He protects animals. He values life, and he finds each life to be beautiful and worth something, and as we get into Lex here, we're going to see the contrast between Superman, Kal-El, Clark Kent's true and pure and clean masculinity versus Lex Luthor's fake and weak and feeble and thin masculinity that he puts forth. Now, this Lex was a very, very good Lex. I've seen quite a few Lex Luthors in my time, but one of the things that James Gunn did, which I believe is incredible here, is in a diversion from the trend of a lot of superhero films in past years of trying to make villains more sympathetic and trying to make superheroes more flawed in their morality. There's nothing wrong with that, mind you. Part of the reason why I'm such a big DC fan is because growing up, I always had this perception that DC was willing to get into the nitty-gritty of the psychology of these characters, touch on some darker storylines, and really humanize these superheroes and these villains. However, like I said in the beginning, what we needed right now is a Superman film just like this. Superman is good. He's good. There's no ulterior motive there. And Lex, he's bad. And there are many ulterior motives for why he is bad. He's pure evil. There was no redemption for him. He didn't realize the error in his ways. He was just angry that he lost. Lex was an abuser of men, women, children, and animals, whereas Superman was a protector of men, women, children, and animals. Lex does not love his girlfriend. Superman loves Lois Lane, and so on and so forth. So they were polar opposites of one another, both trying to fight for the moral dominance in the world of Metropolis here. And I wrote a note down here about the monkey bot farm. I won't touch too much on the politics of this movie here, at least not in this video. But I was very pleased to see that monkey bot farm. I know you guys have all seen it and experienced it if you've been anywhere on social media these days, especially Twitter. There is an onslaught of AI bots, artificially produced content, content produced by real human beings, but made for the purpose of just rage baiting. On this channel, we try to fight against rage bait and diffuse all of that nonsense that is just like a cancer infecting our entertainment, the way that we interact with one another, and so on and so forth. So seeing that displayed in this Superman film in a way that is easy to understand was very nice. I think it was very skillful on the writer's part. It didn't it was just nice to see, is what I'm trying to say. Historically speaking, and again, what I've loved about DC Comics, this is true for Marvel, but we're talking about DC, is that they've always mixed in, if they wanted to, as the writer pleases, some political messages relevant for the time that the story was crafted in. Sometimes it could be cringy, sometimes it could be very compelling, sometimes it could just be awkward and weird, and other times it was very beautiful. This is one of the situations where it's beautiful. Superheroes are such an important thing for American culture. I can't explain it. I can't describe it well enough if you're not an American. In America, we are a very young country, and there's a lot of people here with various ancestries, various backgrounds, and we don't have a complete and rich mythology that unites all of us. Other countries, perhaps, for example, ancient Rome might have, Romulus and Remus, or various, African or European or Asian countries have their own traditional gods and religions that tell the story of how those people came to be and so on and so forth. In America, we don't have that. We don't have a shared mythology in the United States. So in replacement of that, we have these superheroes, a secular version of what other nations created in the past, which is their various deities. In the United States, we have characters instead, and each one of them is designed to speak to a specific time period or a specific demographic or a specific morality or a specific message, and so on and so forth. Various people gravitate to various superheroes for various reasons. And I think Superman is so special as a character because he is a unifying, he's the unifying supreme superhero. He's just good. He's not from here, so no, particular nation on Earth can truly identify with Superman, even though he is an American citizen. He's not from here. He has a history somewhere else, in another planet, with another language and another culture, but he relinquishes it to become a human American. And that makes him fully American. And I'm very happy that the movie chose to put forward this message in a way that was just so simple, so truly American, difficult to deny. It felt very, very good to see that. So enough with the sob story and all of that. Lex, very good. The acting of the actor who played Lex, just tears coming out of his eyes with rage as he was commanding his little Superman drone operators to beat Superman, was just so compelling in the movie theater. I was on the edge of my seat staring at him as this was happening. I was like, Superman, get up. The individual within the, forgot what it was called already, but an interdimensional prison thing that Lex created. There was a guy in there who was Superman's warden, whose child was also in the prison being held in captivity. And this guy sees Superman's goodness and he changes his ways and becomes good and helps Superman rescue Krypto, rescue his son, and get other people out of that prison. That is what Superman does. He doesn't kill. He changes people. He believes there's a better way. So that's enough for Lex for now. Let's talk about the cinematography first. As we look at the two technical elements, the cinematography and the writing here. That scene, well, let's back up for a second. I'm a huge soundtrack and cinematography person. I'm very visual and very auditory. I still listen to the Man of Steel soundtrack to this day. I have a bunch of those songs saved on my phone for over 10 years now. The cinematography in Man of Steel was also very difficult to beat. It still looks new over 10 years later. However, this Superman 2025 by James Gunn does not disappoint in the cinematography department at all. There are some accusations that you might hear from the Snyder cutters, and I'll make a video on the Snyder cut in the future detailing how it started and why they are like the way that they are still to this day. But one of the accusations that you'll commonly hear them say is that you can either have a serious, grounded movie, or you can have a popcorn flick that is very surface level. That is a fundamentally flawed way of looking at films. It's very simplistic, overgeneralizing. And anyone who thinks that they need help. This film was visually bright and vibrant. The cinematography was sophisticated and well executed. There was never a moment that was too dark. There was never a moment that was, actually there was a moment that was a little bit too bright, but I think it was supposed to be. And the movie still feels grounded with all of the humor, with all of the brightness, with all of the pretty colors, with Superman, being the all-around Boy Scout who barely curses and goes out of his way to save even mere squirrels, right? The movie still feels very, very grounded. It feels real, while yet still embodying the spirit of a superhero, the spirit of Superman, and the surrealism of a comic book story. It takes the best of comic books and the best of filmmaking, and it combines it into a really compelling package here. Back when the DCEU was starting up with Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, I was kind of coping. I was saying, hey, these movies are dark and gritty because they're sophisticated. They're sophisticated in terms of the story they're telling, the emotional weight, and so on and so forth. Just give it time. Now, I'm a bit ashamed of thinking like that and thinking like that for 7 years after Man of Steel came out. James Gunn knows what he's doing. And after seeing this film, I'm very, very comfortable with him leading DC. He understands the characters. He understands how to build an individual movie. And when the Supergirl movie comes out next year, we're going to see, is he good enough to construct a multi-film overarching narrative? I haven't watched Peacemaker, so I can't judge on that, but from what I have heard, it's a very good TV show as well. So he seems to be knocking it out of the park in both the film and the television department. For cinematography, the scene that stuck out to me probably the most was the scene in the apartment with Lois Lane and Clark, kind of discussing and, apologizing and confiding in one another, while outside it's nighttime and the rest of the Justice Gang is fighting some sort of floating, amoeba or jellyfish type gigantic monster. The colors were just very beautiful. The nightscape and the cityscape combined with the greens of Green Lantern and the various rainbow colors of that jellyfish, combined with all of the different colors going on there, was very, very beautiful. We just had 4th of July recently in the United States, so it evoked a lot of feelings of fireworks and and excitement there. So that was very, very nice to see, with Lois Lane and Clark Kent in their apartment in the foreground while all of that was going on in the background, lighting up the scene. Now, the writing here, I think for every single character is very, very good, except maybe for Jimmy Olsen. I have the context of understanding the DC universe, but I think for a first-time watcher, I wouldn't know what they would think, but for a first-time watcher, I think they would be confused as to what was going on with Jimmy. Why all of those women were like after him and all of that stuff. But other than that, I think the story was very tight and neat. Crypto's arc, the dog, yes, he has an arc. You see him at first, you see him get captured, and then at the end you see his true owner, Supergirl. You learn that he's not actually Clark's dog. Clark didn't raise this dog. He's actually Supergirl's dog, and his personality matches that of Supergirl, and it all makes sense and wraps up in a nice little package there at the end. Superman's arc, we start off with a fully developed Superman. He's already aware of all of his powers. He's already had whatever breakthroughs and revelations he needs to have to become Superman. The world is aware of him and the world loves him. So we start off deep into a Superman storyline already. And I love that. We don't need to keep doing origin stories. Like I said, these superheroes are our shared mythology as Americans. We've all seen or know of Superman's origin. We don't need to see it again. This story inputs enough of his origin story to make sense so that it's not like you're not completely like a fish out of water, but we don't need to see the origin story. And that cleared up a lot of space for world building and developing this Superman character while getting rid of all of that fluff in the beginning that always ends up the same way anyway, pretty much. I do hope they do the same thing when they introduce Batman and Wonder Woman. Just introduce them like already formed. If there's something that needs to be explained from their past, we can put it into the movie, but we don't need to like literally watch all of that again. It's just a waste of time. So it was a nice, heartfelt, uplifting film. Like I said, the writing made me feel happy. It just made me feel happy. It made me feel good. I like that Superman is just good. He's just good because that's how he was raised, not because he's Kryptonian that he's good, not because his Kryptonian parents imparted him with special morality. He's good because of what his earthly human parents taught him. And that's what Superman is, the best of humanity, the good parts of humanity put into a single individual. So let's talk about Lois Lane. I'm highly critical of romance in TV, movies, books these days. I don't just like anything. And I've always felt like some of the DC ships are very, very cringy. Like, for instance, I hate Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. I've never liked it, even since I was a kid. I just think it's weird. It's just cringy to me. But Lois Lane and Clark Kent have never had that problem. And this movie continues on that trend. Lois Lane and Clark Kent are the most peak ship and the most peak romance of any comic book storyline, and I will stand by that. We start this film off with them already being 3 months into their relationship, so we don't have to go through any of the early awkward stages. They're already in love, but their relationship is not, it's not super deep. They're still figuring things out. Particularly with Lois Lane. I love this version of Lois Lane. I love that she has some sort of a complex or fixation where she is essentially a debate lord. She debates Clark Kent on his positions on things and so on and so forth, to the extent that they actually get into arguments that don't really need to be had. But I love that about her. It sets her up as this, extreme investigative journalist who is willing to even potentially destroy relationships to get the truth of a matter. That is Lois Lane. I loved her insistence when she was questioning Clark Kent. That argument was written so well that I started to get uncomfortable. It felt like it was written by someone who's like actually had arguments like that in real relationships. Very real, very good. And I like the message that was left from that argument, because Lois Lane was making very good arguments. If, just as a recap, Superman interfered with a conflict that was going on between two countries in another part of the world on his own, without consulting any of the governments involved and without consulting the United States government. He did it on his own. This caused some political tensions between the United States and that other country. And Lois Lane was irritated about that. She's like, why did you do this all on your own? Why didn't you consult anyone? And they were arguing back and forth about the politics of what he did. And then at the end of it, Superman was just like, people were going to die. And I found that so powerful that, especially someone like me, I'm like Lois Lane a little bit. I always get bogged down by the politics of a thing and the logic of this or that, which is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And the movie doesn't portray Lois Lane's line of questioning as a bad thing, but it also states, kids and people were dying. And you have Superman who could stop that from happening, and he just did. He was compelled to do so by his hatred of war and unnecessary death. And there's nothing wrong with that also. And so I found that to be a very compelling scene between the two of them. So plus 10 points on Lois Lane. From me, the romance was very good, well written. I'd love to see more of them in the future. Comparing it with Man of Steel, again, the Man of Steel relationship, honestly, looking back, it was kind of sterile, I guess I could say, and a little bit cold. So Crypto. Everybody loved Crypto, not just me. Everyone who watched this film loved Crypto from beginning to end. He's a very scraggly dog. He's not the sleek version of Crypto, the super dog we know from comics and some comic books. He's a very shaggy dog. He has a bad behavioral patterns. He tears things apart. He crashes into people. He breaks through stores and starts eating treats. He does whatever he wants, right? But at some point in the movie, Crypto gets captured and Superman sets out to save him. And someone's like, I think there was something else going on at the time that Superman needed to attend to, but he wanted to save Crypto first. And his justification of this was like, yeah, I want to save Crypto. He's not even a good dog, but he's alone and he's probably scared. And I just love that so much. It continues on with this reoccurring theme that Superman gives mercy and love and values life, even to the things that other people find undeserving. He saved a squirrel's life with the same urgency that he saved a human life. He prevents disaster. He prevents buildings from collapsing totally on top of people. And he values the dog's life just as he values other people's lives. He believes that Crypto is scared and alone, and he wants to save him. And, that's my Superman. Like, that's my Superman. That's what I want out of him. So the next part of this review is Superman's parents. I didn't specify which of his parents for a reason. We are very sparingly shown his Kryptonian parents. Of course, they're dead. We see them through a corrupted hologram recording that they sent him with a message. The first half of the recording is made aware to us and to Superman. And then towards the end of the film, the second half, once it has been uncorrupted, is made aware to Superman and the audience. The first half of the recording seems like a very positive message of what Superman is to do and what he is to represent. But the second half of the message reveals that his parents desired for him to rule over Earth as their ruler, to reproduce with a harem as much as he can, and to replace essentially the earthly population with Kryptonian human hybrid populations. Superman is distraught about all of this, and he seeks comfort in his human parents, Ma and Pa Kent. And the discussion between Clark and his father was very touching. I haven't seen a father-son dynamic like that in forever. I don't think I have. It was a very touching moment. His father tells him he's proud of him, that he raised him with the tools needed for Clark to figure out what he needs to do. And Clark, by the end of the movie, accepts his human parents as his only parents, and his Kryptonian parents, he discards them. I saw a little bit of a controversy on Twitter amongst a small minority where they were frustrated. They asserted that the film taught a message that one should abandon their heritage or be ashamed of their heritage. That is not what I got from the film at all. As another person replied, Superman accepts his cousin, his niece, his cousin, right? I think. Superman accepts Krypto. Superman accepts that he's Kryptonian, that he's Superman. He's not abandoning his heritage. He's simply relinquishing the aspects of his heritage that are not good. And Superman is good. He doesn't like what is not good. So he relinquishes the aspects of his heritage that are not good, preserves what is, his superhuman abilities to help people. And he also combines that with the morality, the good in the morality that his human parents taught him. So he's not abandoning his heritage. He's taking the best of it and bringing it to Earth. And that's kind of what it means to be an American, right? You come to America as an immigrant. You bring with you the best of where you came from. Perhaps your brains, perhaps some aspects of your culture, perhaps some perspective. And you relinquish the aspects of your heritage that you are fleeing from, that you believe are inferior to American culture. And you combine that with the aspects of American culture that you believe are good. And you also relinquish the aspects of American culture which you believe are bad. That is how and why American culture evolves so quickly and why it is the dominant culture worldwide. And I found that to be such a good message for the story. Superman is just a great character. The two guys who created him were really, they were really inspired individuals. So finally, we get to my favorite part of the entire film. Beyond all of the hype moments, beyond all of the cinematography and the writing, beyond all of the messages, I liked Supergirl's cameo the most. Now, if you are a fan of Man of Steel, you would know that in 2013 when it came out, there was an Easter egg that hinted at the existence of a of a Supergirl. Superman came to Earth on some pods He finds more of these pods in the movie, and of these pods, they're mostly closed and empty, but there's one that is open and empty. That was holding someone who was not a baby, someone who was a little bit older than that. And it was always a long-running theory ever since Man of Steel came out that eventually Supergirl was going to reveal herself. She was in hiding in the Earth, but once Superman became known in the DC extended universe, Henry Cavill Superman, she would also reveal herself. Well, that never came to fruition, so for over 10 years now, we've been waiting for a live-action Supergirl in film and not just on TV, and we finally got it, and I'm so glad that we're just starting off with the Woman of Tomorrow storyline. We're just getting straight into it. We're not going and wasting time. We're just going, boom, Superman, next film, boom, Supergirl. I think this is going to be the first time we've ever seen a Supergirl film. I love Millie from House of the Dragon. Love her portrayal of Rhaenyra. She's a very great actress. She speaks the made-up High Valyrian language in House of the Dragon, I think better than anyone else in that show. So I'm really excited to see if they have her speak Kryptonian in the Supergirl film. That would be very nice if they did so. I was so excited when I saw her that I'm actually going to purchase a DC Comics Unlimited subscription just to read more Supergirl comics and get into the character more. It reminds me of exactly what happened after I had watched Man of Steel as a child. I have this childlike wonder and this forward momentum. I want to read comics. I want to talk about the movie. I want to pay attention to what's coming next. And I want to just create things. That is what this movie did to me. Gave me a good story, gave me good memories, made me feel happy, and gives me something to look forward to in the future. Her interaction with Krypto in the brief 30 seconds or whatever that she was in the film was great. Like I said, it wraps up Krypto's storyline. It tells us why he's the way he is. Supergirl is a drunk. She is a depressed individual because of what she knows happened to her home planet. She experienced it firsthand. And now she is a drunk, right? She goes partying and so on and so forth. And it makes sense that her dog would be misbehaving and poorly behaved. But even so, seeing Krypto, pick Supergirl up and, throw her to the ground multiple times, and Supergirl just laughing, because she's Supergirl, she doesn't feel the pain. It was very nice. Superman was very nice to Krypto as well, but it was more of a, he was trying to tame the dog. I'd love to see the dynamic between Krypto and Supergirl where they just let each other go wild. I love this characterization of Supergirl. A lot of people think that she's just a mirror of Superman. She's the same as him. No, they have two completely different personalities. And especially this version of Supergirl that they're adapting is even more of a mess and a failure than traditionally. Which is a very compelling story. DCEU gave female superheroes movies before Marvel did. You may not have liked them, but they did it. This new DCU is giving a female superhero a film, second film of the entire franchise that they're building, the entire universe that they're building, and it's one of the most powerful, it's one of the most underappreciated. It just feels really good. I don't know what to tell you guys. Things have been a bummer lately in America. And this is what film does. It brought a lot of people together under something exciting, wholesome, hopeful, gave us something to think about and something to discuss and something to look forward to. I'm very thankful for James Gunn and the leadership role that he played. A lot of people stayed away from the DC universe a lot of actors, a lot of filmmakers. There's a lot of frustration, a lot of shaky leadership. But he stepped in, he wrangled it, he tamed it, and now we're moving into a new era of DC that feels fresh. It doesn't feel like a rehash, while also feeling like it adheres to the spirit and the tradition of the characters. He's managed, aside from the very few Snyder cutters and the very few copers and rage baiters who are trying to stir up controversy about this film, he's managed to avoid the toxic fan, wars and stuff that surround every TV show and every movie that releases these days, ever since, literally 2013. He's managed to kind of circumvent that here with Superman, and just bravo to James Gunn. When he first joined the DCEU for Suicide Squad, he faced some backlash on social media, some unfortunate, attempts to cancel him and so on and so forth. I'm very happy that he didn't swear off comic book movies forever because of the way that fan bases around here tend to act. He stuck around, and he's back to make things right with the DC universe. So officially, I feel compelled to get back into superhero films, to get back into DC specifically. I've been a little bit fatigued. Not a little bit. I've been very fatigued with Marvel movies. I haven't really watched many of them. I've been focusing more on the TV shows. So yeah, this is perfect timing for the Superman film, both politically, both strategically, in terms of, the Marvel movies. People are getting a little bit tired of Marvel. So it's a great time for DC to come back up and fill in that space. Here's hoping that other parts of the DC universe get a much needed reboot and a refresher with some fresh ideas and some fresh minds. Also adhering to the general playbook that James Gunn went by here, with some new video games, some new generation of comics, some new animated series, and some new merchandise, and so on and so forth. So very pleased with this. I cannot wait to see the Justice League together. Here's hoping Superman continues to be that moral center, good guy, Boy Scout. It's just so pleasing to watch. We haven't seen that in a long time, and I didn't think I even liked that sort of thing, but I do when it's done well and not cringy. So yeah, here's to the new DC universe. All you DC fans, we've been kind of we've been kind of licking our wounds for a couple years now, haven't we? So it's nice that we're starting fresh.